And welcome. This is a special podcast in the MCM podcast. We're going to call it Three Idiots eventually, but right now it's just two of us. Me and I'm joined with my good buddy Super Mario,
Hello, hola.
and I'll be the host again of this podcast. I'm the real deal, and today we're talking about a very special topic. We're talking about the actual director of Tombstone, the 1993 Western classic. If any of you might know what a ghost director is, that's where a studio sets up a false director, more of a kind of figurehead that's on the set, where basically this person will get a credit and have the publicity as director, but essentially he's a mouthpiece for the real director, who's normally one of the film's producers. One of the more famous instances of this would be Steven Spielberg with the Poltergeist, where he was the actual guy calling all the shots and stuff. And you'll see that in like behind the scenes stuff, cast interviews. I think there's even footage of the behind the scenes where you can clearly see that Steven's running things. But yeah, sometimes this is done as a workaround on the Directors Guild of America. Uh, Directors Guild Association. And it can be for a couple different reasons. And other times it's rooted in maybe the actual director doesn't want to be associated with the film he's doing. And sometimes that'll come in the form of a director taking a pseudonym credit on the on the title card. There's a very famous instance of a director asking for that from the Directors Guild and them not getting that, and that was with the movie American History X, which is a pretty cool story itself. But moving on, pretty much every
Get it
time.
on.
What's that, Super Mario?
Let's get it on.
Yeah, let's get it on. Well, pretty much any time a ghost director is used, it's kind of a last ditch move. It's not really something that's planned out ahead. It's usually something that's circumstances force it, and that typically comes from when the hired director is either fired from the film or just isn't competent enough to run the set. And so that's kind of what
Yeah,
happened.
that happened lately with the Star Wars, right? With Solo.
Yes. With Solo, they get fired, but one of the interesting things is Return of the Jedi is actually an instance of this, where George Lucas brought in a upcoming director, and really George Lucas domineered the filmmaking process. I think he went so far as to he forced him to make master shots of every scene so that he would have editorial control at the end of it. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
you just filmed.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of another Star Wars callback for people who love Star Wars. Yeah, that's a thing that did happen. And I think a large reason for that was because of how much the director of Empire had so much control over Empire, and George didn't want to do that again. You know, since it's his baby, he wanted to have as much control as possible. And I believe he's stated before that he enjoys the editing process the most, and so that's probably why he did what he did with Return of the Jedi, despite not being the actual director. Yeah,
Nice. Well, he did get to direct the whole prequels.
he
Fully,
did.
right? And
Yeah. See,
maybe you did there. Maybe you see there is something off with it. His choosing of angle of shot of right. I guess that's my opinion.
I like his directorial flourishes. I think his problem with the prequels is he didn't take enough time on the scripting side. He took it as he loves editing, so I'll put it all towards the editing, and that's just you gotta have a great script, you know. And
Yeah, and then he basically was more than a script. It was just
yeah,
a huge novel story,
yeah,
Lord of the Rings style, I guess. Yeah, right. He's telling the whole story of this freaking universe. Yeah, it
right,
must be hard.
yeah. mean, he did have a huge. I think. I mean, this is a Tombstone topic, but I don't mind taking. This is my podcast right now. We'll take it.
Yeah,
We'll chase
man.
as many rabbits as we want. I want to say his first script was like 250 pages long for the first Star
Damn.
Wars, and that's like it's for those of you that don't know, a script page is equivalent to about a minute of screen time. So that is a huge chunk of time for
Wow.
a pretty out there concept for 77 when the first Star Wars came out. Yeah. But all right, moving on. Now, one thing that
Moving on.
Tombstone did have going for it the entire time was a fantastic script by Kevin Jarre, but it had a hard road to get to release date. So let's go through the trip to it took to the silver screen. Star of the film, Kurt Russell, he described the movie as the one time I had gone out and got the money. I backed the director got fired. It was the hardest work of my life. Tombstone was so painful. Tombstone was so tough. It was just so painful. It was hard physically to do. I got 4 hours of sleep every night, and I'm so happy that we got it made. So that just gives you a small little insight on how much blood, sweat, and tears he put into this project.
I didn't really know that how much was his baby.
Oh yeah, he wasn't there from the very beginning of it, but he was there all the way from a completed script all the way to the editing of the movie.
Very interesting.
So, well, I mean, it's important to know the original director who was slated for this movie and how the film changed as it went into production. Also,
Yeah, he was a Kevin Jarre, right?
yeah, Kevin Jarre. Kevin Jarre, he's a pretty predominant screenwriter. He actually wrote one of your probably favorite movies, or he didn't write the script. He wrote the story for it, and that is Rambo 2.
Damn, what a great movie!
Yeah. So here's a couple of the things that went into the pre-production side of it. So number one, it was 1989. Kurt Russell gets a phone call from his old agent. He had changed agents in I think the last few years, but he got a call from his old agent. And the dude said, there's a script that I'm aware of that you should do. But there's a lot of politics involved here. And so the thing is, this former agent of his was also the agent of Kevin Jarre. And so that's how he got the insight on the script. And the script that Kevin Jarre was making was developed alongside Kevin Costner. So it was originally going to be a Kevin Costner vehicle, and then he ended up leaving it in favor of Lawrence Kasdan's Wyatt Earp movie instead. So he had this great Tombstone script, and he then left it for Wyatt Earp for some creative reasons. But he left the project, said best of luck to Kevin Jarre, and then went on his way. Well, so Russell gets a script. He reads the script. He thinks it's a phenomenal script, and calls up Kevin Jarre. They have some meetings, and then but there was some backlash at first because they was all caught up in the CAA, which is Creative Arts Agency. They actually do a bunch of different things. They do acting, but they also do baseball stuff and a few other things. But they were heavily involved at the very early stages, and of course, they were in deep talks already with Kevin Costner and Lawrence Kasdan on the Wyatt Earp movie at this time. So there's a little backlash at first on getting the ball running on Tombstone, but they talked things through, and finally CA gave them the go ahead to get it done. Well, Kurt Russell, he's got an idea. He's got some of a vision of this movie. So he brings it to his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law was he'd produced 100 movies at this point, so he had a pretty good knowledge and pretty good capability of looking at a script and seeing how much it was worth, how much it would take to make it. And so Kurt brings it to him and asks, "Can you make it for 25 million?" And the answer he got was, "She just." So
We are talking about 1989.
1989.
Was this?
1989.
1989.
Yep.
25 million.
25
That
million in
sounds
1989. Yes.
not,
And
not a lot.
well, so Kurt takes that and he's like, "Well, I've got a favor from this guy named Andy Vanya. He's a film producer of tons of action movies. He did the first 3 Rambo movies."
Nice.
And apparently him and Kurt had built a relationship on this like long bicycle trip they took together. And essentially on this trip, Vanya turned to Russell and said, "If you ever have a project," well, suffice to say, he got the 25 million. He went to Vanya. Vanya set him up, got the ball running, got the revenue coming in. So they start moving things along. But at this point, Kevin Jarre was the man. He wrote the script. He was going to direct. They were into casting. They got several people come in to cast. But the thing is, they needed a distributor. They were indie film, but they needed somebody to distribute it into the theaters.
Yes.
Jarre had never directed before, but, he had such a great script and the revenue came in. There's basically just no reason to back out at this point. This is when they find out that Kevin Costner's, best of luck sentiment was a bit more combative than anyone really realized. Because when they went looking studio shopping, they found that every little avenue was cut down because of Kevin Costner. See, this was right around when he put out Dances with Wolves, and he'd won Best Actor, Best Director, Best Film. He got the trifecta at the Oscars. This is the height of his powers in the
biggest in the
90s.
In Hollywood at the time. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And well, there was only one avenue they had left. They had to go through Disney to Buena Vista. There's just one problem with going to Buena Vista. Is Kevin Jarre, he had a very strong idea for Willem Dafoe as Doc Holliday. From the very beginning of the script, that's who he saw as Doc Holliday. They cast Willem Dafoe. He was signed onto the movie, and then they find out all these studios won't take him on, and only Buena Vista will take him on, and Buena Vista will not have anything to do with Willem Dafoe.
Damn.
And the reason is the 1988 movie, The Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh, damn. Yes.
Yes. And so it was such a controversial movie at the time that Buena Vista just didn't want to get muddied in with it. So they were like, "No, we can't take on Willem Dafoe." And, it was very hard for Kevin Jarre because, he was so committed to Willem as his Doc Holliday. And that was something he fought hard for. He really wanted, but he turned to Kurt and says, "Without Buena, we're dead in the water. So we have to go this way." But luckily, Buena Vista gave them the option to bring in Val Kilmer.
Wow.
And of course, Kevin Jarre and Kurt Russell look at each other and like, "We love Val Kilmer." So it ended up working out for him. So they bring in Val Kilmer.
What did he have at that time, Val Kilmer? What he did at that time? I remember Top Secret, Top Gun. Was he already after?
Maybe it had already done Willow, I believe.
Willow, yeah.
Yeah. So he
was there. He was known.
Yeah, he was known. Top Secret was actually a pretty good hit. I want to say
That was.
Yeah.
That was
all this stuff. A crazy aside is during this like tumultuous time when they found out that they could only go to Buena Vista, and they found out Buena Vista wouldn't let them use Willem Dafoe. Vanna came to Kurt Russell and pitched him the idea that maybe Kurt Russell should play Doc Holliday.
Hmm.
But the reason the reason he brought this to Kurt Russell was because Vanna had an idea for Richard Gere as Wyatt Earp.
Damn.
And so but this is even the most insane part. This was 2 weeks before production was supposed to start. So imagine all this stuff going on, and then somebody pitches you the idea that, hey, you shouldn't be the star, you should be the side character, which is something that he actually thought of when he was reading the script for the first time. He was like, it's either Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday. So that is something that he considered. But then it's like, hey, we should bring in Richard Gere to play your role. And then it's like, we're 2 weeks from production.
Damn
but
no.
things worked out. They got the financing, they got the distribution, and they got Val Kilmer, the great Val Kilmer, to play probably his greatest role as Doc Holliday.
And how long did he have to prepare for that role? Did he also had only 2 weeks?
Like this is the crazy part. Okay, he ended up spending time on Kurt Russell's couch preparing for the role. Like they wrote together. They went over the schedule. They did all the stuff. I think Val Kilmer, he reached out to a dialect coach and asked him for a Southern aristocrat, and then as soon as he said Southern aristocrat, the dialect coach was like, "Oh, I got you." It's like, wait, I had more stuff to say, and the dude's like, "No, I got you." And he sent him these tapes of this. I want to say he's probably like into his late 60s, late 70s, going into his 70s or maybe mid 70s, and he was literally a holdover from Southern aristocracy, and he talked real slow and had that very Southern high class aristocrat, and so that's where like some of the Doc Holliday voice comes from. Is from that one guy, and yeah. Well,
production begins then.
Yeah, production begins. So production starts. Kevin Jarre is leading the cast and crew. First month goes by. They filmed all of Charlton Heston's scenes. If you don't remember, Charlton Heston is the, I think he's a rancher, and he's the one that takes in Doc Holliday when he's like really sick towards the end of the movie. And so they filmed all that. They filmed a couple more scenes, and a lot of that stuff kind of got reshot. Not so much the Charlton Heston side, but the other things they got reshot as after he got replaced. But they became deep behind schedule because Jarre just isn't a director. He Sam Elliott, he played Virgil Earp, the eldest Earp brother, and he said of Kevin Jarre, he said wrote a brilliant script, but he clearly wasn't a director. Kilmer said something similar. He said brilliant writer, had nothing left to direct with. He just didn't have a flair for the role. For the job.
Damn.
Kilmer said it was the very first shot of the movie, and he just looked over to Kurt, and Kurt just starts stuttering and he said Kurt is one of the most eloquent people I've ever known, and it is at that time where it's like, we're in trouble. Well,
damn.
It also didn't hurt that the studio was wanting them to drop 20 pages of the movie, cut 20 pages of the movie out, because it was going to be like this. It was going to be probably more similar in length to the Wyatt Earp movie. Wyatt Earp movie is like 3 hours and 6 minutes. It was going to be a really a huge epic, and through the production after this, they kind of trimmed down on it. And I think the editing also cut out some things too. But yeah,
which happens so often, so often.
About the whole experience of Kevin Jarre, not being able to work with the studio, with the script and this and that, and cutting it down for production. Kurt said, I was very disappointed with Kevin. I told Kevin he's going to get fired. I said, it's not working. They're going to come in here and can you. And they did. It was just a bad experience in that regard. But Tombstone mattered. the drama doesn't matter. All movies have their life. Some are easy, some are not. And that's what he had to say about it. And is at that time that the studio turned to Kurt Russell. He'd been huge in getting this project off the ground and this and that. He had a strong voice in everything that was happening. And so they turned to Kurt Russell and wanted him to be the director of the feature from that point on. And he said, I'll do it, but I don't want to put my name on it. I don't want to be the guy. So there's really one solution that fit for everybody, and that was to bring in George P. Cosmatos. And to understand this move that they made, you got to roll back in time and look at the career of another great actor / director, and that was Sylvester Stallone.
Sly,
yes, exactly. Now Stallone is like a juggernaut of a film. Yeah, Stallone's a juggernaut of a filmmaker. He's actor, producer, writer. He's a great screenwriter and director. And if you don't know, he put so much effort into the Rocky script and everything, just the writing of it. But really, when he made the deal with the studio was going to pay him a pretty good sum of money for the script alone.
For the script.
Just for the script.
But they wanted another guy.
Yeah, they wanted another guy to be Rocky. And he was like, no, I'm going to be Rocky. And so they said, well, if you're going to be Rocky, we're cutting your pay to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they the combined pay he got for the script and acting was less than he would have got just for the script. But he took that low cut, he took that low amount of money, and he made it a investment on his own career, and it paid off in a huge sum.
Big time.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I mean, Rocky made him a leading man, brought him into producing, gave him opportunities to direct and continue his screenwriting. He would write, direct, and star in Rocky 2, 3, and 4. Those being in 1969, 1982, and 1985, respectively. But also during this period, Stallone created another iconic franchise for himself to star in. And that would be these would come out in the same years as Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. And that is First Blood and the weirdly titled Rambo:
First Blood
Part 2. Which it's also kind of
Why don't you call it Second Blood?
It's kind of weird because he also's got a huge thing for Roman numerals too. Both the Rocky and Rambo's kind of got that going for him. So Rambo 2 is very important in this story of Kurt Russell being the actual director of Tombstone, and it's not because Kevin Jarre wrote the story for it. It's not because Andy Vana produced it, but it's because George P. Cosmatos is the credited director of it. A little more history to go on before we get to the point. In 1989, the same year that Kurt Russell joined onto the Tombstone movie, there's a little movie that came out called Tango and Cash.
Yeah.
And it was riddled.
Rambo is a pussy.
Exactly. Yeah, they have Stallone actually say that line in the movie, that Rambo is a pussy.
Rambo is a pussy, man.
And he was the producer of Tango and Cash too, and is riddled with a lot of production problems. And part of that was that Stallone, star and producer, and the director, they both wanted more of a serious cop drama.
Yeah,
that's what they were in it for. But the other producers, they wanted it more of a campy, light comedy. And so there were some clashes there, and eventually the director got axed. And another director got brought in to finish out the movie. And then really the editor at the end of it reshaped a lot of things. And so you kind of get 4 primary visions of the movie. That's the director, Stallone, the producers, and the editor at the end of it. Which is, too many cooks in the kitchen. It should have turned out horribly, but I think the movie's great. I love the movie.
I love that movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. you know.
It is true that you don't really know maybe it happens with more 80s movies or body
Hmm.
cop movies, but you really cannot put your finger on what the genre of the movie is. That is true.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Because it's really sometimes it's super dark. It's it's pretty gritty. And then other times it's like just light and flamboyantly goofy. And this and that is, it's both a serious buddy cop and a campy buddy cop at the same time. It's very and some it's so idiosyncratic that it works. Oh yeah,
It works.
it works. But so what's really important about this movie is that it brought together Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone. They forged friendship here, and it happened shortly before Kurt joined Tombstone. So when Kevin Jarre got booted from the movie, and the studio looked for Russell to lead it, but Russell didn't want to. He didn't want to be the big man on set. He didn't want to have his name put as director. So he was looking for a guy to hold that to be that placeholder for him, right? And so he called up his buddy Sly. He said, "I need a guy." And maybe he knew to ask Sylvester Stallone because they were on a troubled set together. Maybe they got to talking about some things that Stallone had done on some movies. But
Yeah.
essentially, Stallone gives him the name of George Cosmatos because apparently, according to Kurt Russell, Stallone did the same thing on Rambo 2, where he was the actual
On
director
Rambo.
of Rambo 2. And there's
And
even,
didn't, yeah,
yeah,
didn't want to get his name also again.
yeah. So there's even some rumors that Cobra was actually directed by Stallone, and you know why?
I don't know why.
Because George Cosmatos directed Cobra.
There you go. Why do you think that he didn't want to put his name on it?
I don't know. Like he had already directed Rocky 2, 3, and 4,
Yeah,
and he directed another movie
exactly.
before Rocky 2. I'm assuming Rambo 2. They brought in George Cosmatos. If you look at his filmography, he doesn't have great films that he directed or wrote or even
Or nothing.
co-directed or second unit directed. Uh, so maybe they brought him in for Rambo 2 and Stallone just took over the movie, and then maybe he just did set him up for Cobra because he he wrote and produced Cobra as well as starred in it, and made it kind of gritty and this and that. So maybe he just didn't want
You
to
know,
put his name on that when he had it so synchronized with the Rocky series that he didn't want to tarnish his directorial name if it went bad.
well,
So maybe that
yeah,
was some of the stuff that
also,
was going on with that. But
yeah.
yeah, so that's
I'm guessing that a smaller movie, maybe that bombs or
right.
flops, maybe it's not, maybe it
It's
could
a little safety net.
spill
It's a
over
safety
for
net.
his Rocky.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So this is how Russell Crowe and George was I calling him Cosmatos? His name is Costamos. So a little dyslexia on my
Custom,
part. Yeah, it's almost
like
Costanza
we
actually.
care.
It's George Costanza.
Let's just call him Costanza.
Well, this is what would happen. Kurt would write out the shot list for the next day, and he would go to George's room and give George a room, and then on set they would have a hand signals that they'd use with each other, and this and that. And one of the things that Kurt would say is that George was very good at site location. He's very good at site location, which was very important because it's a western. You know, your
Yeah.
your landscape is a huge part of the look and feel of the film. It's a whole character unto itself, and there's very good locations on Tombstone, and that and this, and
That looks very beautiful.
yeah. So he would say he was very good at selecting location, and he did what he was supposed to do. And
Nice.
Sam, I brought Sam Elliott up earlier. This is what he had to say. Kurt was orchestrating a lot of it. He held it together after Kevin Jarre. got taken off of it. And, essentially that was the deal. It was, George, I don't want any arguments. This is what it is. This is what the job is. And, just do the shots I tell you to do. Work with me on set. And let's get this movie finished.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to. The script is. The story is awesome. Yeah, you don't want to ruin it with sad drama.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was one of the things that he was brought in on. Kurt didn't want to seem like he was domineering the other cast, so he brought him as a in between. So it lessened his creative force over the other people, and it also made it easier on him because he was being spread pretty thin on this movie, and we'll get to that later. But he was getting spread pretty thin. And so just having somebody as the figurehead director really lightened what could have been just an overburdensome load on him, right? And so, obviously there's no way to really hide from the cast and crew that Kurt was the one really calling the shots. So he took a few steps more and just to show the cast, build a little trust with that cast. And what he did was, there's 20 pages I mentioned earlier. He basically took that out of his own character, Wyatt Earp. Can you read this huge block quote from Kurt Russell?
The one that says about what Kurt calls an aura character.
Yes. So
in other words, you meet him, you see him, you know who he is. When you see him step off the train, that's it. That's the guy. And then Doc Holliday flashes him out. I said, you're going to have all the acting stuff to do in this movie. And I'm going to make sure it gets done. And I saved most of everybody else's stuff to do. Because in fact, I could do that with Wyatt. I knew the script extremely well. And I could do that with Wyatt because I was going to play him. I knew that I needed from the character what I needed from the character in terms of the movie, in terms of making the movie work. But it wasn't fun to do that. It wasn't fun to cut out 8 of the reasons you wanted to do the movie.
Yeah. So
that's basically it.
Called it an aura character. So, established the I guess, mythos of who the character is and let, Val Kilmer's performance and his Doc Holliday character flesh out the human aspect of who Wyatt was. And then, he did that so that he could maintain the other cast members, their roles in the movie, maintain all the good stuff and their stuff, and just take away from his own. That way, it just, build that trust up with them because they know that the director just got fired. They know that Kurt's really calling the shots, but because he sacrificed his own role for the betterment of theirs, that really helps out the camaraderie and the, just the motivation of the other people.
What a master move, huh? Very selfless, masterful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that's very respectable in this pretty tough situation he got found in. Yeah, because I don't know if many people may not know, but Kurt Russell's never directed a movie before this. He's never directed a movie after this. In fact, I think he's only got like 2 producer credits, and it's not even one for Tombstone. He should have one for Tombstone. He secured financing. He helped build this movie. He doesn't even have a producer's credit on it. But yeah, I mean, like he put a lot into this movie, and we're about to get a bit more into that. Val Kilmer.
He got revenue?
What's that?
Did he got some revenue?
Yeah. He with the producer, it was his buddy. They went on a bicycle trip together.
Oh yeah.
Andy Vana.
And the 25 million.
Yeah, that's where he got the 25 million. So he's the one who secured the financing. He should technically have a producer's credit, but he wouldn't even ask for that. Well, Val Kilmer, he took on some extra duties for the movie as well. I mentioned earlier that he helped write some stuff with Kurt Russell, and I'm assuming that went into when Kurt Russell was paring down the script of the movie. And I think Val Kilmer even insinuated one time that some of Wyatt Earp's lines got moved over into Doc Holliday's because he gave up a lot of his role to make this movie.
Yeah.
the hospital scene, towards the very end of the movie, the "this is funny" scene where they, Wyatt and Doc are together. That was actually one of the scenes that Kurt had to write out himself because Jar had a great scene in that part of the movie, but because of what they did to the script, what they did during production, Kurt decided to take the movie into a slightly different direction at the ending, and so it needed to rewrite that whole bit. So that scene is actually written by Kurt Russell, and which is pretty cool.
A rewrite.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, and another thing Val did is he helped Kurt Russell start editing the dailies because when they lost a whole month, or they lost a bunch out of that month, that first month with Kevin Jar, they had to reshoot some things and this and that, but the studio wouldn't give them any more time. So Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer edited dailies together to catch up on what needed to be reshot and what didn't. And so that was a huge thing for Val to step in to do, especially when he has to craft this iconic character too, and he's pulling double duties like this.
Amazing.
Uh-huh.
That could have given him a nice chance to also to flesh out better because that character,
exactly.
Doc Holliday, is so well done.
And Val Kilmer's, he's also backed up Kurt Russell's claims on writing the shot list and this and that. And this is probably how he was aware of that part of the situation, doing this editing with him. This is a quote from Val Kilmer. He said, "I watched Kurt sacrifice his own role and energy to devote himself as a storyteller. At times on set, he'd urge Kurt to do another take, do another take for Wyatt and this and that. But Russell would pound on, quote unquote, pound on for sake of the schedule. Very Wyatt-like," is what Val said about that. Kurt Russell claims that the movie was almost like a Western Godfather, and that's how he described the movie. And the movie that nobody has seen, because that's how different the movie is from the version. The movie that he shot is different from the version that us audiences have seen, which is kind of unfortunate because he didn't get to be in the editing part in post-production. So they lost some things. Like I think he said something about there's more between Wyatt Earp and the Cowboys, a deeper connection between him and the Cowboys that got cut out of the movie. There's a few other things that if you're a big fan of Tombstone, you might know about that lost footage and this and that. But what's really cool about all this is that Kurt Russell does own all of the footage. That Vanna, that I kept bringing up, that producer, he gave him all of the tapes and stuff that has all the stuff they shot for the movie, and it's sitting in Kurt Russell's garage, just waiting for a day when he's got some free time on him to cut together.
Or when we start a movement.
Oh yeah,
when we start a movement,
then we'll get the Russell cut.
Release the Russell
cut. Release the Russell cut. And what got me, what reminded me about all this, is the Sylvester Stallone. He's doing a director's cut of Rocky IV. And I was thinking about that, and then it reminded me of that Kurt Russell has all that footage, and it's like, it's COVID-19. Maybe he is taking the opportunity to recut the movie. He said, he claimed about it. He said it could have been the greatest Western ever made. I'd really be.
It is a cult classic.
It's bigger than a cult classic. It's an actual. I would say it's full-on classic.
Full-on.
It actually did really well. So, like, Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp was, Kevin Costner almost killed the film before it was made. I kind of think that he left Buena Vista open just to take Willem Dafoe away from the movie, just as a dig at Kevin Jar's, because he was involved with Kevin Jar from the very inception, or maybe not the inception of the script, but from the early workings of the script. So he had to have known that Willem Dafoe was his go-to. So that might have been like just some like yeah, you can make this movie, but you're gonna sacrifice something you love about it. It's
What a mean Jonathan Kent.
which
What?
he's actually a pretty cool guy, and one of the things I love about Kurt Russell is that Kurt Russell like didn't take any offense to what he did. He thought of it as good hardball. Yeah, it's his quote: hardball, good hardball.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and
Well, he really loved the story from the start.
oh yeah, like
Mhm.
I'm really interested in maybe the full script is out there. You might be able to find it online. I ought to look it up after this. But I'd be
That would
interested
be
in
nice.
reading the full Kevin Jarre script. And I think it's crazy that you almost you, there's an alternate universe out there where we could have had a Richard Gere, Wyatt Earp, and Kurt Russell, Kurt Russell, Doc Holliday, or Willem
I
Dafoe Doc
never,
Holliday.
I never thought about Richard Gere actually being a tough guy, let's say, or a leading guy. But then, he acts in this movie, The Jackal,
Oh
The
yeah,
Jackal
yeah.
with Bruce Willis.
Mm.
That Bruce Willis is
That's a
actually the
pretty
bad guy in the movie.
that that's a movie that it's just like it should be so great, and it's just like hitting just below the bar. You know,
Yeah,
I
and
think
he's like the
yeah.
leading guy in that
Yeah,
movie.
he's the
You
lead.
know,
I think he's good in it. I think Bruce Willis is good in it. Jack Black even has a cool little scene in
Jack
the movie.
Black, he gets, spoiler alert, he gets thrashed to
He
pieces.
gets whacked.
Yeah. Oh, that was, yeah. Yeah, I remember watching that as a kid actually and being like, damn, that was some hard,
you know, I don't
tough
think he.
stuff to see.
I don't think Richard Gere ever had a full on like actiony role in at least in his
No,
younger
that's
career.
the only one I can think of.
You know,
That's what I mean.
he played Lancelot opposite of Sean Connery's King Arthur one time, but
Oh
that was
yeah.
more of a romantic role than it was an action role. With Guinevere.
Yeah, exactly. And never like a full action. Or maybe we can argue that the Tombstone also could be, a different type of action movie. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm having trouble seeing him there
Mm.
in that movie. But well,
There is a cool
and William
movie
Dafoe.
with him and with Richard Gere and Topher Grace where he plays a
Which one would that be?
CIA agent, and Topher Grace is an upcoming CIA agent, and they're like investigating a potential Russian uh, spy who's infiltrated the CIA and is also like this massive hitman that they've been on the hunt for like a long time.
Oh, Double.
The Double,
The
yeah,
Double.
yeah. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's actually pretty good. I almost spoiled a big thing in it, but I was smart enough to hold that back. Is there is a twist? There's actually two twists. But I think
Nice.
I think that movie might have been the first time, maybe not the first time I'd seen it. The wire that comes out of the watch so you can strangle people. I think that might be the first time I was introduced to that, or at least the first time it stuck with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really dig everything about Tombstone. Like the entire cast. Like I can't remember if it was Kurt or Val that said it, but it's a testament to the script on how great the cast was because they had so many people who were leading actors or up and coming actors that should be leading actors that decided they would take smaller roles in this movie just because of how
Well,
great
Bill,
it was. I mean, you had
I love Bill
You had
Paxton.
Billy Bob Thornton in like a
Billy Bob Thornton.
4 minute role.
Billy Zane.
You had Billy
Billy
Zane in it.
Zane.
You had and then of course you had like Bill Paxton was in a
Oh, I love
supporting
that.
role. Just an awesome, epic cast, and like everybody's firing on all cylinders. It's got a fantastic look to the movie. They got great locations. They got great costuming, and this and that. It was, it was made with essentially no money,
Yeah, it's incredible.
and especially since they had to reshoot
It's
things,
incredible.
shot in the first month of it. You know, it's a it's a pretty awesome movie, pretty awesome story behind the movie too. And one of the things that I loved about Kurt Russell was when he brought in George Costamos. He basically told him, "I won't say anything about this deal we've made about you not being the actual director until after you're dead." And he kept his word. There's a lot of this story that I pulled from was in a interview that Kurt Russell took with True West magazine, and it was literally a year after George Costamos died that he finally let out that he was the actual director of the movie. And
Wow.
yeah,
Has Stallone come out also and said something like that?
I don't think any official word has come out about that, but it's in that interview where Kurt claims that Rambo 2 was directed by Stallone, and he didn't say anything about Cobra, but that's what a lot of people think.
It's just a rumor.
Mm-hmm. And Tango and Cash, I just find that like a very interesting pivot point between Stallone it makes me think that it had to be it has to be true that Stallone directed at least Rambo 2, because Kurt calls him up, asks him for a guy to stand in as quote director, and he automatically he's like, "I know the guy, George Costamos. Here you go. This is him."
Yeah. Here's what you're gonna do, Kurt. Follow my lead.
But yeah.
Wow. It's incredible, man.
Pretty great story. And
that is super nice.
Well, I
now I have to catch up with all these movies again.
Oh yeah,
I have to, because I cannot remember last time that I've seen Tombstone, and I cannot remember the last time that I've seen Tango and Cash. And even Rambo, Second Blood, I have to catch up.
Larry and I were talking about doing getting on Discord and watching a movie together, and maybe recording like a commentary track to go with the movie.
Oh, that would be so cool.
And I threw out Tango and Cash as a possibility, and he also threw out Lost Boys as a possibility. And I think right now we might actually do the video game The Last of Us, the first one. And
nice.
Just do a cutscene feature that he found. But that's something that we're looking to do in the next couple weeks when we have some time. And well, thank you for joining me, Super Mario. It was great for you to be here and bounce off some things with me. And
well, for an idiot like me, it was very educational.
I'm glad it was. And
now I'm off to watching Tombstone again.
Oh,
and I urge you, all the audience, please do it. Please, if you haven't seen this movie, you have to.
Well, I'm the Real Deal. This is the MCM podcast. This is our first 3 idiots minus 1. And thank you for listening. And sayonara.
Ciao. 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 Ciao.